folded up towel or something like that, when you came into your crow pose last time we had a play around with this, then feel free to grab hold of something just to prevent you from worrying about dropping onto the forehead. Otherwise, all you need is a bit of space. Don't even need a mat, but if you've got a mat, roll it out. Bare feet. You can keep your fancy socks for Jacko, they don't impress me. We want bare feet for this. And we're going to start today in a posture called child's pose. So for this, we're going to bring the toes together. I'm going to take my knees a little bit wider than the hips. So if you've got a mat, it's about hip distance apart. And then we're just going to walk forwards with the hands and have a bit of a stretch. So just stretch through the back of the body. Use your palms and just push your bum towards the heels as far as you can. And then see if you can allow the chest to start to sink towards the floor, and maybe rest your forehead on the floor. Now this is where we start to notice if we've got any tightness around the front deltoids or the pecs. And if you've got a pillow or a folded up towel or even a block, then to make it more comfortable, if it is uncomfortable for you, you can rest your forehead on something. So try that if it's too uncomfortable for you to get the head all the way down to the floor, if the head's just not going there. What you can also try is if your shoulders feel really tight, the wider you take your arms, then the more comfortable it's going to be for the shoulders. So if you've got your arms right in front of the shoulders and that feels really desperately uncomfortable, then make it easy, just take those arms a little bit wider and see what's possible. We're just going to take a couple of nice long deep breaths here. So this long slow breathing, really good for us at current time. If you might be feeling a bit stressed, a bit anxious about all the stuff that's going on, then this long slow breathing has a really deep effect on our nervous system, so it starts to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's what we need when we need to calm down. So it's why we take children that are sobbing to one side and tell them to take long slow breaths. Exactly the same applies to adults. Just let that breath flood nice and deep. You probably feel the belly just expanding, pressing into those thighs as we're starting in child's pose. We're just going to come onto the fingertips. So again, this is just to stretch out the shoulders a little bit. So if you feel as if you can, make a steeple with the hands and allow that chest just to sink a little bit closer towards the floor. If it's deeply uncomfortable, don't do it. Just keep the hands flat on the mat. And then we're just going to bring ourselves forwards onto the hands and knees. So I'm going to step my knees a little bit closer together because they were wide. So I'm bringing my knees underneath my hips. And I'm just going to work my wrists underneath my shoulders and spread those fingers nice and wide. So we're going to use all of those hands just to support our upper body weight, protect the wrists a little bit. And if we think about taking the crown of the head towards the wall in front of you and taking the tailbone into the space behind you, then it naturally starts to lengthen through the spine. So if you come into a lazy position where we're hanging out in the shoulders, letting the belly sink towards the floor, just think about lengthening, and we automatically grow a little longer through the spine. That belly draws gently in, and we become active through the arms as well. So it's from this neutral position, this tabletop position, that we want to start to move the spine. So as we take a breath in, we let the belly sink to the floor. We're going to lift up the tailbone, see if we can draw the chest in between the biceps. You might even roll the eyes up to the sky. This is called cow pose. And then as we breathe out, tuck the tailbone under, tuck the chin to the chest, and arch that back, coming into cat. Now we're all going to feel a little bit different about cat and cow. One of these might feel like somewhere you just want to stay for a couple of breaths, and that's absolutely fine. Just hold it there if you want to. Or maybe just begin to work your weight from left to right. Just explore how the back feels. What feels good, what doesn't. Enjoy it. We're just waking the body up. And then let's come back into that neutral tabletop position. So still thinking about long straight spine, belly gently drawn in. We're going to keep the hips over the knees, but just walk these hands forward. So this is a bit of an extension for that upper back. So it's a good prep position for many of the postures that we do in calisthenics. Again, it will identify tight shoulders, tight pecs, so if you need to take those hands wide, let the hands come wide, rest the forehead on the floor, and we're going to try and allow the chest to sink towards the floor. This is called puppy pose. Now, if you're quite comfortable in this position, you can tuck the chin and look forwards. It will help you just to get a little deeper into the posture. But you choose where you want to be, where you need to be. And we're just going to walk those hands back up underneath the shoulders, tuck the toes, move the bum towards those heels, and let's come into downward facing dog. So, I have no idea why this is called down dog, but it's also called inverted V pose, which I think makes a little bit more sense because that's the shape that we're trying to make. So if you think about your tailbone being the apex of that inverted V, then what we want is to have a long, straight spine. So if your hamstrings are tight, like mine are, then if you try and push your heels towards the floor, what's going to happen is that we're going to come into this more of a U shape, okay? So keep your knees nice and soft, and let's use the hands to push that tailbone all the way up into the sky. We're going to do a little bit of work just to fire up the core a little bit here. So let's take the right toes all the way up to the top of the room, split dog, stay strong through the arms. We're going to put bend in that right knee, and then come high on your left toes as you bring your right knee all the way to your nose. We're going to pause there for a minute, so shoulders are back over the wrists, and then lift and lengthen that right leg. And then we're going to take that right knee to the left elbow. So keep the foot high if you can. Lift and lengthen. And let's take that right knee to the right elbow. Lift and lengthen again. And then we're going to take that whole leg underneath the body. Keep the foot lifted, and let's sweep the left fingers to the sky. Now if that's too much, you can rest the right foot, but if you can, keep that right foot lifted. Nice. And then let's plant those hands, plant the toes, lift those hips back to down dog. Let's just move with the breath a little bit here, keep the body moving, floating into a high plank position. We're going to drop the knees to the mat, drop the chest in between the hands, elbows graze the ribs, and then slide forwards. Elbows still close to those ribs, little back bend before taking the seat back to the feet, tucking those toes, and lifting those hips into down dog. We're going to do the other side, so just find that inverted V pose again to begin with. And then let's take left toes to the sky. Come high on the right toes, bending that left knee, we're bringing it to the nose. Lift and lengthen. Left knee to that right elbow. Lift and lengthen. Left knee to that left elbow. Lift and lengthen. And then let's pass that left leg all the way under. Swivel on that right foot a little bit. Sweep the right fingers to the sky. Can you keep that left leg lifted? If not, rest it on the floor. Nice. Let's come back to down dog. Move through that little vinyasa again, floating into that high plank position. Dropping knees, drop the chest in between the hands. Slide forward, little back bend. And then send the seat back to the feet. And just pause there for a moment. Just rest in child's pose. So back into child's pose. It's a great resting position. It's a forward fold. So it's cooling and soothing. It helps with that parasympathetic response I was telling you about at the start. So nice slow breaths. And when you're ready, we're going to tuck those toes, lift the hips, coming back to down dog. Take the right foot to the sky. Look at the space between the hands. Let's step the right foot all the way through. Now we're going to stay in this lunge position. Really push into the base of that left big toe. And let's float up into a high lunge position. So keep the shoulders nice and relaxed. Work that left hip forward, that right hip back. If you can, look up at the space between the hands. And then we're going to drop that left heel. Arms wide into warrior two. Really pushing into the outer blade of that left foot. Nice big bend in this knee. If it's drifting in towards the big toe, you need to work these muscles on the outside of that right thigh, the abductors, just to take that knee out towards the baby toe. Still working this core. So if your ribs have popped up, think about lengthening the tailbone, squeezing that belly in, both arms shoulder height. We're going to lengthen out this right leg. So, legs super long. Try and squeeze up your kneecaps a little bit. It will sort of firm up these thighs, make these legs feel super long and engaged. We're going to hinge forwards at the hip crease. So try and touch the wall in front of you. When you feel as if you can reach no further, we'll let the right hand just float down to the inside of that right leg, and the left arm's reaching up towards the sky. Now, it doesn't matter how far you come down the leg, by the way. So I'm kind of towards my ankle, but if I'm at the knee, the calf, it doesn't really matter where, but try and get this body nice and open, facing the left side of your mat. And then we've got a little bit of work we can do for the core. So first option is just to let that right hand float an inch away from that right leg. And you'll feel this obliques engage, core's working really hard to support that triangle pose. Or you can just draw a line with the right hand over the right big toe, reach forwards. And if that feels alright, you can take the left hand all the way over the left ear. If that left shoulder starts to drop though, keep that left hand up towards the sky. Nice last breath. We're coming all the way back to centre, arms wide. Turn those toes. So we do the other side. So left foot is pointing towards the front or back of your mat. Right foot is now parallel with the short edge. Arms are still nice and wide. Legs are long, squeeze up those kneecaps. We're going to hinge forwards. And then let that left hand float down. Remember, it doesn't matter how far it goes. But get these arms nice and wide. Perhaps you can look up towards that right thumb. Still engage through the legs. Another tip is just to try, it's as if you're trying to bring the heels a little bit closer together. Really engages those legs. So then left arm, maybe an inch away from the left leg. Perhaps taking that left arm all the way forwards. Maybe the right hand over the right ear. And then we're coming back to centre. Pop the bend in that left knee, warrior two on this left side. So that knee's now bent, working towards the baby toe. Both arms are shoulder height, squeeze the fingers together. Then slightly tricky transition, we're going to pick up the right heel and sweep the fingers to the sky. Coming into high lunge on this left side. So hips facing the front of the mat now, really pushing to the base of that right big toe. Look at the space between the hands. And then let's plant those hands. We're going to step back to down dog. Use a vinyasa here, option to come into that low plank position this time if you want to. So floating forwards, shoulders back over the wrist. We're going to roll forward on the toes and then hover down to elbow height. This time, flatten the tops of the feet into the floor, arms long, draw up the kneecaps, upward facing dog, and then lift those hips to the sky. Coming back into down dog. And from here, we're going to walk the hands to the feet and heel toe those feet out to mat distance, drop the sit bones and sink into our yoga squat position. So try and keep the chest lifted, so try not to round into that posture, but keep the chest nice and lifted. As last time we met, this is a good position to come into your crow pose from. So if you fancy it, and we will have a little roll into a headstand maybe as well, I think. So if you fancy it, hands are placed, shoulder distance, big hands, so wide down dog hands. I'm going to come up onto those tiptoes and work my knees as high into my triceps as they will go. So I know for some of you that's a bit down here and the knees are on the outside of the triceps. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to work those knees as high into the backs of the triceps as I can possibly go. It just allows me to get the hips a little bit higher. Looking forwards, that's the tip. So if you look down, that's where your head's going to go. So try and keep the gaze forwards. If you want a pillow or a folded towel, obviously in front of the head, then feel free to use any support that you feel you might need. Elbows are going to go backwards, so not out to the side. The elbows are going backwards towards my shins to create a shelf. And then I'm going to see if I can take the weight and squeeze the heels up towards the bum. Now, like I said, there is an option here to have a roll into a headstand, only if you fancy it. So, if you do, we're going to try and control the descent of the head down towards the mat. That wasn't particularly controlled, but never mind. And then we're going to try and roll the legs up to the sky. Nice tripod with the hands and the head. And then maybe you can roll back into your crow position. See what's possible. Have a play around. See if you like it. So have a little play around with that. And then we'll have one more little play with a side crow. Let's have a play with a side crow. So side crow, exactly the same, except we're coming at it with a rotated spine. So apart from having the hands in front of me, I'm going to twist my spine and plant the hands kind of parallel with the thigh. If that makes sense. Exactly the same though, nice big wide down dog hands. And I make exactly the same kind of shelf by taking my elbows back. Now some people will take, in this position, right knee onto left elbow, right hip onto right elbow. I only ever take my knee onto my left elbow. I think it's because anatomically my legs are a bit short, but also it just helps with a bit of unilateral strength. So I am going to take my right knee onto that left elbow. Again, I'm looking forwards, pushing the mat away with the hands, and then we lift up those legs. So let me try it from this direction, see if it gives you a different or a better view. So turn those knees, got to get that rotation through the spine, plant the hands, make the shelf. There you go, have a play, see if you like it. And we can build on some variations of that if I see you next time. So, when you are ready, we're going to come into one final bit of core work. So make yourself long, come into a plank pose. So in plank, remember we're active through the arms, we're not hanging out in the shoulders. Heels, hips, bum are all in a nice long line. We're going to try taking the left hand away from the mat, bringing that left hand down, taking the right hand away, right hand down. So try and do it without opening up to the side. We're keeping the hips facing the floor. One more on each side. And then drop those knees, seat to feet, we're back in child's pose for 3 nice, long, big breaths. And then swing those legs around. Let's all meet on our seats, legs crossed. Big breath in, sweep the arms wide, look up to the thumbs, and then big breath out as we bring those hands down through the centre. Thanks for joining me again, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you get along with those little transitions from frog into headstand and how that twist into crow works for you. Remember to practice both sides. I'll go and do that now. See you next time.